You might be wasting time on skills that are getting cheaper every month, while others are becoming more valuable even with AI in the picture. The way companies use data is changing faster than most learning paths can even keep up with. And AI didn't just make things faster, it's quietly changing what's valuable and what isn't. This doesn't mean data analytics is a bad career, actually the opposite. It just means the game has totally changed and most people are still playing by the same old rules. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the 5 data analyst skills that AI is actively devaluing. And more importantly, what to focus on instead if you want interviews, leverage, and long-term income. This is based on what I'm seeing with students, hiring managers, and the projects that are actually getting careers moving forward right now. This will help you stop wasting months and start aligning your effort with what the market is actually rewarding today. So let's start. All right, now before I give you the list, let me set the stage because context matters here. AI adoption is no longer theoretical. It's not some future trend that we're preparing for. It's already embedded in how companies operate. According to McKinsey, AI adoption jumped to 72% globally in late 2024. And as early as today, it's now standard in about 80% of enterprise workflows. So this isn't a pilot program anymore. It is now part of everyday infrastructure. And here's what that means for you. Workers using AI tools are now saving an average about 12 hours per week. The market is adjusting in real time. And here's a principle that you need to understand. When a skill becomes easier to replicate, it becomes less valuable. So this isn't about AI taking jobs. That's just the wrong framing. It's about skills losing scarcity. Stanford's human-centered AI research showed a 13% decline in entry-level hiring for AI-exposed roles. Things like data processing. Why? Because these tasks no longer require a human seat. Think about it. If anyone can do something with a few prompts, why would a company pay a premium for it anymore? They just won't. Peter Sondergaard, former executive VP at Gartner, said it best: information is the new oil of the 21st century, and analytics is the combustion engine. But here's the update for 2026. While analytics is the engine, AI is now the fuel injector. It makes the engine run faster than any human can pedal alone. So the question isn't whether AI is coming for data analysts. The question is which parts of the job are losing leverage and which parts are gaining it. And that's what we're going to break down today. Now, before I get to the list, I need to shift how you're going to think about this. Skills don't disappear, they just lose leverage. Read that again. The skills still exist. You can still learn it, you can still use it, but the market stops paying a premium for it because it's no longer scarce. So here's what's happening right now. We've shifted from chatbots to what's called agentic AI. These are systems that don't just talk, they execute complex workflows autonomously. IDC reports that 65% of CIOs are now managing AI agents that produce business outcomes directly. The machines aren't just assisting anymore, they're actually doing work. But here's what they can't do. A 2025 Harvard Business Review study showed that AI can actually generate ideas, but it can't distinguish a good idea from a mediocre one for a specific business context. That requires human domain judgment. So here's what hiring managers are actually caring about now: impact, judgment, and decision making. They're not paying for effort, they're paying for outcomes. So while AI accelerates execution, it doesn't accelerate responsibility. It can write code faster, it can generate charts, it can even summarize data, but it can't own the result. It can't sit in a meeting and defend a recommendation. It can't understand the politics of why certain insights matter more than others. That's still on you. Hilary Mason, a data scientist and the founder of Fast Forward Labs, put it perfectly: data is a tool for enhancing intuition. The output might be machine generated, but the outcome is still human. So when I walk through these 5 skills, I'm not saying that they're useless. I'm saying that they're over invested. People are spending months or even years mastering things that used to be differentiators in the job market, but now they're just baseline expectations or not even needed anymore. And that's a problem if you're trying to stand out. All right, so let's get into it. Skill number 1: basic data cleaning. Let's start with the one that surprises people the most. For years, we've been told that data cleaning is where analysts prove their worth. Handling missing values, removing duplicates, standardizing formats, fixing data types. This was the grunt work that separated real analysis from spreadsheet users. And honestly, it used to be true. If you could clean messy data, you were valuable because most people couldn't. But that's changed. Automated data validation systems now have accuracy rates of as high as 99%. Human data entry and cleaning still hovering around 4% error rate. That's about 100 times more. Tools like ChatGPT, Claude, and built-in features in Python libraries can handle about 80% of the standard data cleaning task with simple prompts. So what used to take hours now takes minutes. And here's what people get stuck though. For a decade, we've been saying analysts spend 80% of our time cleaning data. But now, if you're still doing that manually the whole entire time, you're essentially doing a $20 labor job that Python library can do in about 3 seconds. So don't get me wrong, you still need to understand data cleaning, but if that's your main selling point, you're competing with machines that work faster and don't need coffee breaks. Skill number two, coding and programming. Now, this one might sting a little, especially if you spent at least 6 months grinding through Python courses. Coding used to be the ultimate barrier to entry. If you could code in Python or R, you had access to capabilities that Excel users could only dream about. It separated the real analyst from everyone else. And I get it. I learned Python on my very first job to automate a data pipeline on my very first project. It felt like I was unlocking a whole new superpower. But here's what's shifted since then. As early as 2023, developers at Goldman Sachs were using generative AI to write about 40% of their code. Now for data analysts, that number is closer to about 70 to 80% for standard SQL or Python snippets. And the bigger change, natural language to SQL is no longer a gimmick. It is a feature built in most data warehouses. Snowflake, BigQuery, all of them. You describe what you want in plain English and it generates the query. Syntax is no longer the barrier to entry. So what happens when everyone can write code? The code itself stops being a differentiator. The mistake I see constantly is people spending 6 months or more memorizing syntax and building these big bloated coding projects that AI can replicate in seconds. They think that being the best coder makes them even more valuable, but it doesn't anymore. Not by itself, at least. What will matter is knowing what code to write and why, understanding the business logic, and knowing when automation makes sense and when it doesn't, and when you can correct the mistakes that AI will tend to make. When I built my first Python pipeline, the value wasn't in the code itself, it was in recognizing the opportunity to automate something that was eating up hours of manual work every month. That judgment is what got me noticed, not the syntax. AI can execute, but it cannot strategize. All right, quick pause. Now, if you want to land your first job in data analytics and avoid the lengthy mistakes that I did, click the link in the pinned comment where you can find the exact steps that my students use to land their job in data analytics without going back to school. All right, now let's get back to it. All right, skill number three. This one's personal for me. I failed discrete math and calculus 3 in college. That's partly why I chose data analytics over data science. The math requirements for data science were just way too intimidating for me, and I know I didn't want to spend years catching up. And you know what? It hasn't held me back, not once, not even a little bit. Here's why. Statistics used to be the intellectual backbone of data analysis. If you understood p-values, correlation coefficients, and statistical modeling, you were seen as someone who could do real analysis. It gave you credibility and made you sound smart in meetings. But the landscape has shifted dramatically. Tools like Claude and GPT can now score in about the 90% percentile on standardized statistical reasoning exams. So they don't just calculate p-values, they can now even explain in plain language. The computation is handled and the interpretation is increasingly assisted. And here's the part that no one wants to admit. Only about 15 to 20% of data analyst roles only require inferential statistics. Most business value actually comes from descriptive analytics, explaining what happened and why. So I watch people go deep in statistical theory, spending months on courses that cover techniques that they barely use in business settings. They think mastering advanced statistics will make them stand out. But in the real world, most business problems just don't need that much advanced statistical modeling. They need someone who can ask the right questions, find the right patterns, and communicate what matters. Descriptive statistics, that is what you need. Understanding distributions, outliers, measures of central tendency, absolutely. So save yourself the headache that I avoided by accident. Skill number four, basic predictive modeling. Remember when data science was called the sexiest job of the 21st century? That was back in 2012. Harvard Business Review put that on the cover and everyone lost their minds. Predictive modeling became the skill that everyone chased. If you could build a model that predicted customer churn or sales forecast, you were seen as cutting edge, advanced in the future. I watched so many people pivot their entire learning path towards machine learning because of that headline. But here's what happened while everyone else was chasing the sexy title. The market for AutoML, automated machine learning, started growing by over 35% annually. Building a churn model became a one-click feature in certain tools. What used to require weeks of feature engineering and model tuning can now be done in hours by someone with little technical background. The barrier to entry just isn't lower, it's actually collapsed. I see this constantly in portfolios. People will build Titanic survival models, Netflix recommendation systems, thinking it will land them the jobs that they want. They spend over a year learning TensorFlow and scikit-learn, building these impressive sounding projects. And then they get stumped in interviews when they ask to clean a data set or just build a dashboard that tells a story. They want people who understand the business problem, not just the algorithm. So in 2026, the sexiest skill is not building the prediction, it's decision intelligence, knowing what to do with the prediction once you have it. If you want to be a data scientist or an ML engineer, go deep into modeling for sure. But if you just want to be a data analyst making six figures, focus on the skills that analysts actually use every day. Okay, skill number 5, manual reporting and repetitive analysis. Let me paint a picture you might recognize. Every Monday morning, you pull the same data, you run the same queries, and you update the same dashboard. And you send the same report to the same stakeholders every time. Rinse and repeat. For years, this was job security. Someone had to do it. And if you were reliable and accurate, you had the seat at the table. But that seat is disappearing. 65% of global businesses have now adopted AI specifically to reduce repetitive tasks. Schedule queries, auto updating dashboards, automated alerts. The manual work that used to fill calendars is now being deleted from job descriptions. So here's the uncomfortable question that you might want to ask yourself. If your job title could be replaced by a refresh button, you are in the high risk zone. The mistake that I see is people positioning themselves as the person who can maintain the reports instead of the person who can drive decisions with data. If your value proposition is I update weekly dashboards, you're one automation away from being redundant. The analysts who thrive aren't the ones who can babysit systems. They're the ones who build them. They're the ones who look at that morning report every Monday and ask, what decision is this actually driving? And how do I make that decision more obvious for the person reading it? That's a completely different skill set. And that's the one that keeps you employed today. All right, now let's zoom out. What do all 5 of these skills have in common? They fail when used in isolation. They don't die, they get commoditized. AI exposes who relies on tools versus who creates value. Here's the takeaway. AI didn't raise the technical bar, it just raised the thinking bar. The technical execution is getting easier. Anyone can clean data, write code, and run statistical tests, and build basic models with AI assistance. But understanding the business context, knowing which questions to ask, and prioritizing what actually matters, and communicating insights that actually drives decisions, that is very rare. And it's still very valuable. And that is what separates analysts making about 50 to 60K and those making over 100K. So, what should you focus on instead? Skills that compound with AI, skills that AI can't replace, only amplify. So, first, framing the right business questions. Before you touch any data, you need to understand the problem. What decision are we trying to influence? What metric will prove we're winning? This is where most analysts fail. They'll jump into the data without even understanding why it matters or what matters. Second, prioritization and judgment. Not everything is worth analyzing. Knowing what to focus on, what to ignore, and when to stop digging, that is judgment. AI can give you all the options, but it can't give you which one that matters most for your specific situation. Third, storytelling and decision making. Data doesn't persuade, stories do. If you can take complex information and turn it into a narrative that makes a VP feel that insight, you're irreplaceable. This is a skill that gets you in boardrooms, not the cubicles. Fourth, translating insights into action. It's not enough to say sales dropped 10%. You need to say sales dropped 10% because we lost traction with our high value customer segment. And here's a 3-way step plan to fix it. That's what drives actions and that's what gets you promoted today. These aren't technical skills, they're thinking skills, and they're exactly what AI can't do for you. So this should also change your entire learning strategy. Blindly following roadmaps is risky now. The roadmap that worked in 2020 does not work in 2026. Two people can learn the same tools and get completely different outcomes. One gets hired and one stays stuck. The difference isn't the tools themselves, it's how they think about the problems. And here's how to rebalance your learning time. Spend less time on tutorials and more time on real projects with messier data. Spend less time collecting certificates and more time building a portfolio that shows business impact. Spend less time learning new tools and more time mastering the fundamentals that transfer across every tool. The goal isn't to know everything, the goal is to be dangerous with the right things. All right, so now that you understand which skills are losing value and what to focus on instead, there's something else that most people get wrong. They learn the right skills but have no idea how to prove how to use them. And in this job market, proof is everything. So in the next video, I walk you through the only portfolio project that you need to get hired in today's job market. It's the same approach that my students have used to land roles at Fortune 500 companies without getting another degree or an expensive boot camp. Click here to watch now.